Let me know when you see it green on the bottom. Like if you look at the bottom of OBS, if you see a little green, it should say live in a number of seconds.
Live. Oh, nice. Seconds.
Okay, so we're live.
Perfect.
Now all right,
can
you double check?
Yeah, I'll go check these out.
All right, guys. Well, we're getting the tech stuff set up here. We'll get this kicked off. This is Mark Joyner.
What's up, Father Freedom?
Father Freedom, also known as
Mitch Miller.
Okay, he doesn't like that. We'll just call him the Father. He likes that.
The
Father and the Godfather. Is that
Mitch?
The artist? Okay, beautiful. I like it. I gotta come up with a name like that too. I think. So, guys, welcome to episode number 1 of The Last Men. This is a show that Mitch and I are doing together here, and we are going to be talking about some very interesting topics. We started an accidental broadcast, and you guys noticed that the beginning of this thing, the title was Goodbye World. No, we're not going to do anything crazy. Paul Galloway writes on there, he goes, Mark, are you okay? You feeling all right? That's a little ominous. Don't worry, dude. It's all right.
No suicide is happening today. Maybe suicide of old ideas and beliefs that you may hold dear.
Boom. I love that. I love that. That is kind of what's going on, actually. And we're being a little bit cheeky here because everybody starts out with Hello World. We thought we would start out with Goodbye World because The Last Men is about the world and the way it is right now, and we don't think the world is heading in a very, very healthy direction. There are some very positive things happening in the world, but there are also some very dangerous things happening in the world, and they need to be addressed.
Yes.
And we are in an environment right now where we cannot talk about certain things, and I think that inherently is a major problem. So censorship is one of the major topics that we're going to be talking about here over this whole thing. We are also going to be talking about the direction that the world is going in and the direction that we think the world needs to go in if we're going to survive these next few decades. And we'll talk about why I think these next few decades are pretty perilous here. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I think the Last Men, first of all, this is a show that you can come to rely on. We're not going anywhere, and we're not just going to do 3 episodes. This is something that we are going to do for a long time. Because these are conversations that need to be had. And these are conversations that are, I don't want to be melodramatic and say that they're all being silenced everywhere, but I will say that the type of stuff that we're going to talk about is not accepted in the mainstream and is less and less so all the time. But one thing I also want to say is The Last Men, to me, is also a metaphor for the idea that there is right now and is going to be a small group of men. Now, when I say this, I'm not anti-woman. Don't get that twisted at all.
Liar, you're a misogynist.
And I'm a misogynist, and that's one thing that we're going to talk about too. Is
let's label each other.
I'm not. There is no such thing as man.
That's right. Gender's it's a spectrum, right?
It's a spectrum, like the male vitamin. It's like the spectrum. So what I want to say is that Last Men is also a metaphor for a small group of men who are willing to think in a way that is open and not steeped in or stuck to rigid, for lack of a better word, ideology or a program. Sam Harris said this once. He said it's quite a shame when you can know somebody's opinion about one thing and then be able to predict their opinions about everything else. That's not a good thing because many things are complex and not interrelated. And so what we want to do is we are going to explore topics, not like we're know-it-alls, but explore topics in a way where we can bring the fucking truth up to the surface and not let things like identity politics and all of this weird emotional, my life experience is this, therefore the whole world needs to be like this. We want to bring some logic and some reason and some fucking fun to the fact that the world is speeding up to a place that is not good. Although there are obviously wonderful things about life and our culture, things are not headed in a good direction. So, but we also want to stay optimistic.
And the last one is also about the notion that manhood is kind of under attack right now. It is not okay to identify as a masculine man in this day and age. And
In this Western culture.
in the Western culture.
We're here
yes.
in Thailand. That doesn't exist. It's a joke. You tell them about this, they think, what is this, a joke?
But what's funny about this is that a trans person is actually more accepted in Thailand than in the United States. Like here, everybody is cool with whatever you want to be.
Yes.
Including if you want to be an actual regular cis male, whatever the new label is that we have to add for this. In Thailand, you can be gay, you can be, you could be trans, you could be whatever, and that's why a lot of people come to Thailand, because they love that openness of the culture. But it's funny how in a more open, more accepting culture, it's more okay to be an actual traditional masculine man in this society than it is in Canada, where you're from, and the United States, where I'm from right now.
There's so much judgmentalness going on in America. Britain's gross right now. Canada's confused. And Western Europe's kind of messed up, and it's like pushing into the East a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's like here, a trans person is it's a third gender. It's just they're accepted as they are, and that's it.
Yeah,
Whereas,
and that's great.
Dude, when I'll say, okay, hey, I'm gonna go to Thailand now, and then you'll have friends that are like, watch out for the trannies, watch out for the lady boys, and it's like, dude, are you that uncultured? Are you that ridiculous? And then he's like, yeah, but I'm not discriminating at all. And it's like, but you kinda are.
Well, it's funny. It's the same people who are gonna like give you a hard. Like when I was in the Bay Area, last time I was living in the Bay Area, this was the beginning of the social justice movement really getting into full swing. I mean, like
San Francisco.
Yeah,
And you knew it was happening because they stopped shaving their armpits, and you're like, wait a minute.
Well, that's been going on for a long time. That side of the feminist movement has been around for a long time. The PC movement has been around for a long time. But right as I was leaving the Bay Area in 2012, that was like 2011, 2012 is when it really started getting into full swing. And I remember there was one person who was giving me a hard time. This same person, when they heard that I was doing MMA, they're like, "You do MMA? Like, if in my work, if they found out you were doing that, like everyone would probably like try to get you kicked out of the company. That's horrible. It's a blood sport." And I just said, if anybody said that to me, I would fucking laugh in their face. Like, I mean, if somebody said that they wanted to kick me out of a company because of what I choose to do, two grown men choosing to fight, as a sport, okay? Like, if you were to judge that and to decide to kick me out of a company because of that, I would find you so ridiculous, right? But what's funny was that same person, when they found out that I was gonna go to the Philippines, right? Because I have employees in the Philippines. They were like, "Oh, you're going to the Philippines, huh?" And they made this like raised eyebrow judgment. And I'm like, wow, so you're one of these social justice guys who's like, all for, fairness, and you want everybody to be nice and kind, but then you immediately make this snap judgment about somebody who has business in the Philippines. Yeah, there are people who go to Philippines and Thailand for prostitution. I mean, let's just say it straight out. That is the stereotype, right? But like, out of all the people in the Philippines that you've interacted with in the Philippines and Thailand, like what percentage of them are there just for that?
I don't know if anybody, unless they're hiding it.
Yeah,
But
I mean, some of the guys who come here for business, incidentally, are here for that, and that's cool. Like, I'm not going to judge that either.
But that's
right?
another thing. Yeah, why would you judge that?
Yeah.
Why would anyone choose to judge that?
Well, okay, so all right, this is how politically incorrect we're going to get, guys. Nothing is going to be off board here. And by the way, let me just say this really quick. We're going to say some topics that are probably going to get us kicked off Facebook. They're probably going to get us kicked off YouTube. These channels are probably not going to last very long because we're going to do our best to be as uncensored as possible here, okay? Within reasonable bounds. Now, if you look on the side of Mitch's chair there, we have a little logo. You can see thelastmen.show. I want everybody watching this, if you like what we're saying so far and you want to continue watching this, go opt in at that page. Why? Because if they shut these channels down, email is the only thing that we're going to have.
Yeah.
Now, eventually they're going to start censoring email too. I think that's going to happen. If you guys have been watching the stuff going on Project Veritas recently, I highly recommend you go do it. These guys have been very unfairly maligned. Project Veritas is doing some of the only real investigative journalism happening on the planet right now. They're doing legit investigative journalism.
And nobody's perfect, so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, well, when they say nobody's perfect, though, they make fun of these guys for things that are not fair. Like they call him James O'Keefe, convicted criminal James O'Keefe. He was convicted for trespassing while he was doing investigative journalism. That's what kind of convicted criminal he is. But when you see him on the mainstream news, that's how they introduce him. Right? And they say that they selectively edit the videos. Well, every editing is selective, by the way. And by the way, Project Veritas actually releases the raw footage of the stuff that they do. So I'm a big fan of what these guys are doing. And if you guys haven't been tracking what they're doing to expose what's going on in Silicon Valley right now, you need to check it out. It's astonishing to me that what they revealed in the last couple days about Google is not headline news all over the world. For the last 2 years, we've had people breathlessly talking about this whole Russia narrative with relatively flimsy evidence, 2-year investigation, with some of the best and brightest legal minds in the world investigating it. They can't find anything clear. And that's headline news for 2 years straight, right? With all speculation. Now we have clear documented evidence of Google actually manipulating an election.
And planning to again.
And planning to do it again, and not a single mainstream news outlet is covering it.
And this is real evidence. This is actual video.
Yeah, this is actual video of the people who are in charge of these policies, actual source documents from Google leaked by insiders, right? Google's not denying it, but what does Google do? So the YouTube video that's like exposing all of this gets censored by YouTube, which is owned by Alphabet, the same company that owns Google, right? Yeah. So I mean, that should tell you something right there. Something is happening in the world right now, and it's not right. Yeah. And as a guy who used to work in the intelligence community, I will tell you right now, I have extreme suspicion about all of this being just incidental. Oh, it just so happens that all of these news outlets choose not to cover this huge story. How is that possible as a coincidence? I don't think it's coincidence. I think there's something more significant happening. Now, what is that? We should talk about that. I think we only have speculation, but it's a worthy topic of discussion.
Yeah. And it's important to know that most of the information you're getting right now, unless you're really digging, is just not the... I even find myself doing this. I go on Google News in the morning, and I'm looking at stories and stuff. And the way the brain works, always, we tend to believe authority. And I'll even read a news article from Wall Street Journal, and I have to catch myself. I'm like, okay, I'm reading the Wall Street Journal right now. Like, take it with a grain of salt. And then we're going to be deconstructing linguistic patterns and verbal patterns, because one of the things we want to talk about is how these different things, because we're not going to sit here and bitch about what's wrong, but we're also going to help you and help each other come up with tools to be able to not only fight back at this stuff, but understand their game at the same time. And so part of that's to be deconstructing linguistics in the news, in different videos, and people saying stuff, people saying words that don't actually have any fucking meaning at all, like developing world versus developed world. It's completely fucking asinine. It makes no sense. The developing world is anyone who's basically not the USA, if you think about that,
right.
where it came from. But there is no developing world.
Or are we developed?
The presupposition
is that we are developed.
They consider, yeah, exactly. What is a fucking, exactly.
Right?
It's subtle, man. And because they consider, the American people and a lot of the civilized Western world, consider China to be a developing country. Think about that.
Well, China is more advanced in some ways.
Absolutely.
The military strategy that they're employing against us in the United States right now is actually, I would say, more advanced. They're playing a more subtle, more interesting long game, which is kind of a whole rabbit hole we can go down on one show. Yes. We can deconstruct international politics here.
But you guys need to know that there are words that are used as prisons and words that shape your perception assumptions of almost everything, like mansplaining. Doesn't actually exist. It's something that both genders do equally. Therefore, it doesn't exist as a gendered thing. It goes from, it's not, because if it's patronizing and rude and correcting somebody and assuming they know nothing and you know everything just because you're a man, the just because you're a man part, that is real in a few cases, obviously, but then the extrapolation is now everybody who is patronizing, rude, or trying to correct somebody is doing it because they're a man. And so then you get the political debates and stuff like that, but it's complete and utter bullshit.
Well, I think it's bullshit, but their counter argument is that womansplaining is not a thing. Mansplaining is a thing, but womansplaining is not. I don't know how one made up abstract concept is more of a thing than something else, but anyway.
The same behavior.
Their argument is that, well, men are in power though. The patriarchy is in power, and by virtue of you being a man, you have all of these privileges. Therefore, every time you speak and you try to explain something to a woman, you are leveraging your power over her. So mansplaining is more important of a phenomenon.
But it's like, but see, this is where there's no end, because it spills over into political debates.
Yeah.
And there was a political debate where everyone was saying, and she claimed that he was mansplaining her. But it's a debate. So anytime the argument gets uncomfortable, which it will, because it's a debate, between two people, or it's in the politics, all of a sudden, it's now, it's more insidious, because the word mansplaining doesn't explain a behavior, and that's just as innocent as that, like some fucking people on the internet we're battling about. They're like, it explains something, so why bother saying this? What are you trying to start by saying this? No. By genderizing something that both do and calling it mansplaining, you are taking a descriptive word to describe a behavior, and you're turning it into instant discrimination.
Yeah.
You are now discriminating on them by doing a behavior that they fucking do back.
Well, here's an interesting analysis of this. Okay, in a sense, the word mansplaining and shutting anybody down with a label like that, by the way, and the word mansplaining, I believe, is weaponized language designed to shut down discourse. Okay, the same way the label misogynist, fascist, whatever label you want to throw at somebody, the easy labels of hatred that everybody is using now. All right, these are designed to shut down discourse, because the bar for fascism is very, very low now, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about that this morning.
Yes, it's set right here, so anyone trips over it.
Yeah.
For that one thing, and then all of a sudden you get the true definition gets put on you.
Yeah.
So if you don't agree with some, say, socialized healthcare in the way that it is, you are automatically the complete opposite as a label.
Yeah. And then what you have to be is you've got to be step and fetch it at that point. It's like, oh, I better be very careful. What do I have to say, master? To be right, in front of everybody. That's the game that is being played. But here's what's funny. Now let's deconstruct some stuff a little bit, and let's provide some definitions, some intellectual tools, because this is something you and I talk about a lot. Like, by the way, this is the conversation that Mitch and our buddies and I, like, this is the kind of stuff we talk about all the time. We feel needs to be discussed more. We think it needs to be broadcast, because the conversations that are being broadcast to you through the TV, in my opinion, are not very healthy. So let me give you some definitions that I think are very useful. I think that those labels are actually veiled ad hominem attacks. What do I mean by that? There is a logical fallacy, okay, and if you are not adept in the concept of logical fallacies, we were just talking about this morning, bone yourself up on that. You need to know it. It is rock bottom foundational stuff that everybody needs to be aware of. It's why when I wrote the Simpleology print book, I started it out as a self-help book, but it ended up becoming a book about epistemology masquerading as self-help, right? So argumentative ad hominem is a logical fallacy because instead of attacking the argument, you are attacking the person. And the identity of the person, the habits of the person, has absolutely nothing to do with the truth or falsehood of the individual statement that they're making. Now, it is true that past performance is a good indicator of future behavior, right? However, it doesn't have anything to do with the individual thing that they said right there in the moment. This is why it's labeled or identified as a logical fallacy, because it doesn't have anything to do with the actual logic. But if you say somebody is mansplaining, that is it's kind of like doubly veiled ad hominem. It's like you are saying something about them that makes their argument automatically false. if I call you a misogynist or a fascist or a racist, right? Any of those labels is attacking your identity as a person, ergo making your argument invalid, all right? So this is the kind of stuff that I think everybody should be taught at a young age.
Yes, taught, because you need to see it first.
Yes.
You need to know what it is and then observe it, and then you can learn how to respond to it in a way where you don't buy into it. Because is it safe to say that the ad hominem, it's also, like, I would say there's multiple fallacies lumped into the label. Like, I would put straw man in there too, because you're mischaracterizing
Very good.
what they're
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, there's probably more.
Yeah, they're
if you
not
think
mutually
about it.
exclusive, these
Right,
fa-
what they're doing, and it's power games, and they know that the words are their weapons.
Yeah,
and so
that's right.
they know how to clash fucking 16 fallacies into one bundle and hit you with it so hard you look like the biggest monster on earth.
Here's what's really funny about this, and kind of sad and a little bit tragic, is that many of the people who are involved in that side of the argument are actually super well-meaning people. Like if you are a person who is empathetic and you care about people who are disadvantaged, it's going to be very easy for you to fall prey to these types of ideologies because
Yes.
they're basically capitalizing on your empathy. Now, when I say they, who am I talking about? I don't actually know. Okay, there are a lot of theories about how this type of thinking is being taught or is being indoctrinated into kids in universities now. There's a lot of thought about how this is seeping into Silicon Valley, seeping into politics. Some people think that there is something behind it, that there are people behind it. I mean, if you listen to guys like Jordan Peterson, he has his theories about who the people are and what their intentions
the postmodernism, Marxism, the French intellectual stuff pushed over.
Right. But it's interesting how this is universally happening across university campuses. Like, to me, if universities were what they profess to be, you would see radically different ideologies across all of the universities. But you're starting to see more and more homogenous thought across more and more universities now. That, to me, indicates that there is probably some layer of orchestration behind all of this. Now, again, I can only speculate, and you start to sound like a conspiracy theorist, a crazy, person who's just like making things up, when you start going down those things. So we have to be very careful.
Yeah, you have to ask the fucking questions.
Yeah. I mean, what can we know, what can't we know? Let's be honest about that. But at the same time, I think it's very healthy, it's very okay to question whether or not there's orchestration behind things, because it has happened in the past. It does exist. That's a very funny thing. By the way, the label conspiracy theory is a very interesting label, is it not? It means, if you look at the surface words, you're theorizing about a conspiracy. Now, do conspiracies ever happen in the world? Well, I would say anybody who has been in high school knows that conspiracies happen.
Absolutely.
Conspiracies happen in high school all the time, do they not, right?
They happen everywhere. They happen at the workplace constantly.
They happen everywhere, right? So, I mean, is it strange to hypothesize that maybe on some governmental level or maybe some power level, there are people who are conspiring for things to happen? Of course, that's not crazy. That's
the word theory, that doesn't say that is a fact. Yet
No,
when
it's a
somebody
theory.
labels somebody a conspiracy theorist,
Yeah.
they're ignoring the theorist part.
And
then they add the tinfoil hat on there just to make you look extra stupid.
That's right. And how did that term become pejorative to begin with? How was it that, right? But you can't talk about that. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't talk about that?
That face is everything. They're fucking afraid.
They're afraid.
They're afraid.
They are afraid. Why are they afraid to talk about certain things? And you guys watching this, you tell me you're not afraid to say certain things on Facebook. Are you not?
Yeah, you can't say that you've been feeling like you need to walk on eggshells more. And there's some of you watching who are stomping on those fucking eggshells like crazy. You just don't give a fuck, And then
cheers to you.
Yeah, and there are those of you who are just praying that that you don't break any more eggshells because you don't know what to say. And that's most people. They feel they need to. I have a friend, and we were at dinosaurs existed. He's like, I can't find truth. He's like, but I never went to school. I never learned. He's like, I just can't see how they actually existed. It just doesn't seem right to me. And everyone,
Haha, you crazy uneducated dum-dum.
oh dude, everyone at the
How
table
dare
was
you.
just teasing him, and it's understandable at one level, but at another level, and I was like, well, you know, I wanted to find out why he thought that. You take the guy seriously.
Yeah.
Like,
be respectful of the person's mind. You don't know what path that person walked to get to that point.
And you never know what they might say.
That's right.
And
maybe he has a valid argument.
He didn't, to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which isn't surprising to me. Right?
Because he's just like, I don't know, so therefore I'm going to err on the side of, he's like, I just don't see it. He's like, they make these things, there's no way they could know the color of their skin, and like, that's valid, but he's like, they never really found, they find 2 bones, and then they make a whole skeleton, and then they make the skin, and they have the hair, like, it's like they figured out the whole thing from a few bones. I get that stretch, but he's like, I really just don't know the answer. He's like, so I don't believe there is.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a leap there, but it was interesting to see everybody just tease him, and I'm like, well, Galileo was thrown in, didn't he die in jail, or he was thrown away for believing that you know, the earth and everything went around the sun.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't, something is in our culture, and it's probably always been there, but now it's getting worse, where any idea that is not this narrative of fairness, equality, whatever you want to call it.
The Overton window is the concept.
If an idea doesn't fit that, you are shamed and mocked out of the conversation.
You know, Saul Alinsky in Rules for Radicals, which is a very fascinating book to read, by the way. And it's funny, you bring it up in the mainstream parlance. They're like, you must be a crazy right-winger if you're talking about Rules for Radicals. Well, why is Rules for Radicals still one of the best-selling books out there? One of the best-selling political books. Somebody's taken it seriously. And it's a very brilliant book. As a guy who has studied asymmetric warfare, Eastern and Western, you know, throughout most of his whole life, I have to respect the brilliance of Rules for Radicals as a handbook for asymmetric warfare to fight against a more powerful foe. And I don't like the way it's being leveraged right now, but you have to respect the tactics. They are very brilliant. One of the things that Alinsky says in Rules for Radicals is the notion that ridicule is mankind's most powerful weapon. Now think about this, right? Notice how in that group that you were hanging out with, people were ridiculing that guy for questioning something. To me, anybody who has a question or a hypothesis, I respect that guy 100 times more, even if he's wrong, than a guy who's parroting the thing that's right? Because he's been taught that that's the correct view of the world.
Or the guy who stays completely quiet.
Right, because he's afraid.
Yeah.
He's afraid. Well, and what is he afraid of? He's afraid of ridicule.
Yeah.
He's afraid of ridicule.
That's right.
It's a very fascinating thing.
It's the same thing why people are afraid of public speaking. They're afraid of ridicule.
That's right.
And
so the biggest fear, according to some, who knows if that's true, but according to some statistics, that's more feared than death.
yeah, and that's
so they say.
And every time I say that, I feel like I'm just parroting because I don't know if that's true at all.
Right. Yeah. I haven't seen the actual study.
No.
Right.
So I really don't even want to parrot that anymore. But it's like.
Well, that's why I say so they say.
But here's what's interesting. Public speaking or whatever, if you look at social media, in essence, you're public speaking anytime you make a status, anytime you do a video.
That's right.
And so we have a whole world that's connected by the internet, and everybody is public, and everybody is immediately into the public square. That ridicule is, no wonder we feel anxiety, because that ridicule can happen at any moment, whereas before it never had to happen all the time. Now, no matter what you do, it's open for ridicule by the whole world.
Yeah, what's safe now? Posting videos of your fucking coconut macaroon? Is that what's safe now? Is that what's okay? Is that the only thing you can do without being afraid of being judged or labeled? Well, I don't know, man. Maybe coconut is code for whiteness.
If the macaroon was made with butter, then the vegans will fucking get you.
Oh shit! Oh, that's right. That's right. You got to be careful. It's a dog whistle. It's a carnivore dog whistle.
I was doing a talk in Vancouver a few days ago, and there's this one woman after the talk. She was like, I want to talk to you. She's like, I'm a life coach and I'm a vegan. I was making fun of them the whole time. I was like, listen.
See, now I want to ridicule her,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
See, now I'm being the same kind of dick though when I do that. Right?
No, and it's funny because I said to her, I was like, listen, I'm ridiculing you. It's fine, but like if you don't hate people who don't, if you're not trying to stop people from change people, and you're just happy with yourself, you live that example, you be the change you want to see in the world versus trying to push it on people, then I have no problem with you. But also, there's ridicule and then there's comedy.
Yeah.
And people who have low self-esteem take comedy as real.
Yeah.
It's the same reason, like arrogance, confidence or competence is arrogance to somebody who has low self-esteem because it's subjective.
That's right.
And
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. You know, it's funny. Yeah. So everybody is very sure of their view these days. You know, like, so funnily enough, so like sitting in this chair, and I'm going to call out two people, I'm not going to mention their name, two lovely people, by the way, who are at Project Persuasion. So I have been on the Carnivore Diet for the last 9 months. It's probably maybe
and it's
longer than 9
fucking,
months now.
it does the act of it and the whole idea of it, injustice to even label it Carnivore Diet.
Yeah, right.
That's how we know it.
Right.
But like, it got that label,
Yeah.
and that label has caused so much more problems for it than it.
Well, I mean, I understand the people who ridicule it, right? Like, I get it. Like, you know, a few years ago, I would have ridiculed it as well. I would have thought, you're crazy. I mean, you need fiber in your diet,
That's
right? I mean,
for those of you who are listening, that's you eat only meat.
Yeah, and the people who say like things like, you know, they parrot like Dr. McDougall. I was vegan for 2 separate years of my life, by the way. It made me sick each time. Made me very sick, and I was strict. And vegans, before you start sending me all the lectures, I've read all the stuff you have. I've read the China study. I've done McDougall. All these. I've read all these guys. I did it strictly. I had all the tests. I did. I mean, everything picture perfect, exactly right. Balanced the nutrients, all that. It never worked for me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. In fact, it gave me health issues.
Okay, bro.
It's not.
Think about the cows. You
think about the poor cows.
You must live with IBS.
That's right.
Or whatever fuck because the cows are cute, bro.
Well, this is the reason why I went carnivore. Okay, I heard that there were some guys who were successfully treating gut issues with the carnivore diet. Now check it out. So I've had these gut issues since I was a kid, and it was at first diagnosed as an ulcer. Then it was like IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, all these different things. And it's not fun, people. I'm telling you that right now. Anybody who's gone through it, I'll tell you right now, it is a struggle. It is very, very difficult, okay? I tried all of the medicinal approaches, okay? The medical community has nothing for it. I'm sorry. And by the way, I kind of suspect that a lot of these autoimmune diseases are kind of like different manifestations of probably something of the same disease, right? And by the way, every label of every malady we have, it's just a man-made label. We don't really understand most of these conditions. And if you look at the labels in, like, you know, manuals like the DSM-4 or now the DSM-5 for psychological labels, and if you look at the way diseases have been labeled throughout history, these are evolving things. These are man-made labels on collections of observable phenomena, symptoms that we don't understand. Well, given that my problems were diagnosed a whole bunch of different ways and nothing that I did made it better, and then I heard that people were successfully treating it. There's a clinic in Bulgaria that's successfully treating all kinds of autoimmune conditions with the carnivore diet. I heard about that, and I heard anecdotally from other people who were doing it, and I thought, well, what the hell? You know, I mean, the medical community's option to me is you're gonna live with it for the rest of your life, and the only way that we're gonna be able to help you is we're gonna maybe relieve some of the pain, but the drugs that we're gonna give you are slowly gonna destroy your liver and are gonna make you sicker and are gonna make you bloated. That's what the medical community had for me. So if you want to fault me for trying the carnivore diet, you know,
and if it's working and you're feeling great. I mean, eating a lot of meat is nothing new. Sluts have been doing that since Eve blew Adam.
Yeah, and everybody that's, you know, has anything to say about it, it's like, come to my house and we'll do a fitness contest together, and you tell me about your diet. You know, we'll talk about it that way. But anyway, so I wanted to talk a little bit about ridicule. So two very lovely people who happen to be, I'm not going to call them vegans because they are plant-based.
Okay.
And they eat a little bit of cheese. And they're very, very intelligent, really great people. Now I remember when they saw me cooking a steak, and they're like, hey, Mark, you know, we noticed that your skin is kind of red. And they were really kind of getting in my face about it. And
are they eating the plant-based for moral reasons to do with animals or more health?
I think that they believe it's both for them.
Because
Yeah.
if it's moral for animals, I completely understand that argument.
Yeah.
If you're talking about health, then it gets very sketchy.
Well, some people will say that it's irrefutable. It's the same kind of settled science that climate, change is, right?
Mansplaining is fucking settled science too.
It's settled science, right? Yeah. By the way, there is no such thing as settled science.
Science, by definition, is not fucking settled.
Boom. If you say settled science, in my opinion, you have disqualified yourself as being a person who is educated about science. I'm sorry. Even though there are people who testified in Congress, about climate change being settled science. Okay, now I don't want to. I'm sure there's some
settled science. That's the most dumbest fucking two words ever put together.
Yeah, it is an oxymoron.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
truly an oxymoron, right? So now there's some people who hear this and they're gonna be like, I can't believe these guys are climate deniers. There's another label, right? No, I'm not actually. I just don't know, and I don't think you know either. I don't think you know enough about it. Like if you're watching this and you're like, man, these guys are morons. They're questioning climate change. 98% of the scientists around the world agree. I dispute that figure.
Absolutely.
Because I've talked to many scientists who are skeptical about the science behind climate change. I'm sorry, I don't think it's 98%.
Wordplay. They'll say no credible scientist today.
No credible scientist.
No credible scientist today refutes climate change.
What is
man-made climate change, right? Climate's change.
Is Matt going to be our Jamie now? Is he?
Yeah.
We need to have you on a computer looking shit up, man. Oh, actually, that reminds me. Okay, to dig into another layer of the bullshit here, okay? Who can you trust? Who can you trust? Are there some news outlets out there that you can trust? So thinking about Jamie on the Joe Rogan show reminded me of something that happened. Did you watch that episode with that chick that was she was a
Yes.
New York Times reporter?
I already know it without you even saying it.
Oh, dude. Okay, this was some of the most astonishing stuff. Now, I've been criticizing the mainstream media for decades now. Now, it's funny though. Now, if you say that, people automatically think, oh, you must be a pro-Trump zealot. It's like, well, I'm not pro or anti-Trump, actually. I think a lot of the arguments against Trump are basically bullshit. Like, I remember reading in the New York Times, there was this article that said, these are all of the lies of Donald Trump. And in paragraph 2, they talk about how, he said there was 1,000 hamburgers when the football players came to visit him, but there were only 300. And I'm like, this is your lead? This is your big smoking gun evidence about Trump being a liar? Is that there were only 300 hamburgers and you said there were 1,000?
Yeah. And everybody loved Clinton, and
Yeah.
he claimed he didn't get his dick sucked.
Yeah, that's right.
How soon we forget.
It's how soon we forget.
Everybody loved Clinton.
Well, the guys who wrote that article, either they're just really bad journalists who don't know how to bring the important facts out, or maybe this, ironclad evidence of this guy being what you say he is not so ironclad. Anyway, this New York Times reporter, she was maligning, what is the name of that? I'm trying to remember the name of this
Maybe
politician.
there's 3 patties in each burger, and there's actually 1,000, but it counted the 3.
That's right.
There
He was right after all. It was 1,000 burger patties.
So there was somebody that he brought up the name,
Yeah.
and then she immediately said, "This person's a."
She's a veteran. She is a Democratic presidential candidate. Her name will come to me here in a minute. Maybe we can have Mac look this up. Mac, could you look up Democratic presidential candidate veteran, and her name will come up. I'm trying to remember the name of her. But she's a very reasonable person when you listen to her, right? Like I've heard her speak before, and I thought, wow, this woman is actually, she's making a lot more sense than most of the other Democratic presidential candidates that I'm listening to. Now, yeah. No. It's God,
Her name's not very normal.
Not a normal name. It's an unusual sounding name.
But I haven't.
On the tip of my tongue.
I haven't heard her speak.
She's quite intelligent, and she makes some very, very powerful anti-war arguments. And I think that it's probably because of her anti-war arguments that people are so against her. Now, Rogan brought her up, and this New York Times reporter was like, she's an Assad toady. That was the first thing. She called her monstrous.
Tulsi Gabbard?
Tulsi Gabbard. That's it. Tulsi Gabbard, who to me is one of the more rational, intelligent sounding people if you actually listen to her speak. Don't read the articles Don't read the hit pieces about her. Actually listen to her speak.
Yeah, use your own mind to determine what something is.
Well, this is what was astonishing to me about this. Okay, this woman, she was maligning Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, and then she said that her ideas were monstrous and that she was an Assad toady. And then Joe Rogan
those
goes,
two things, monstrous, Assad toady.
Assad toady. And Joe Rogan goes, well, what's a toady? And she goes, oh, Jamie, look it up. What's toady? And I'm like,
she's like, and then, but she, plausible deniability, because as he was looking up, she's like, I'm pretty sure I know. I just want to make sure. I'm pretty sure I got it right. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
but she wouldn't say it.
She wouldn't say
it because she
didn't
don't fucking know.
She heard it at the fucking water cooler in the New York Times, and she's parroting it. And here's the thing, okay? This is the level.
And Joe's not an idiot.
Joe is not an idiot at all. The dude is brilliant, okay? And the way he filleted her just so casually, without getting confrontational, I thought was genius. I have huge respect for the guy, right? So anyway, she goes on, and then she's like, well, she also, she was pro conversion therapy,
yes.
Right? She was coming up with all of these reasons, and then Joe's like, well, according to whom? And then so she's like looking through her phone. She's like, let me find it. She says, here. She reads off a headline of an article, and the headline was, Tulsi Gabbard is pro-conversion therapy. And then she goes, see? And then she tucks her phone back in her pocket.
The look on her face when she did that, it was like settled science and you're an
Case
idiot.
closed.
Yeah, she was like, yep. See?
Yeah.
And it was like, she read the few words.
Yeah.
And that was that.
It was a headline of an article. She didn't say who wrote the article, what the news source was.
But it said what she wanted it to say.
And that was enough for her. That is the standard that you're reading with journalism, ladies and gentlemen.
Because she's a fucking journalist for the New York Times, for God's
the
sake.
paper of record.
So popular
people.
of one and authoritative one that she was on fucking Joe Rogan.
Yeah. And Joe Rogan is probably the most popular show in existence right now.
Yeah.
And probably more popular than any TV show.
It's 300 million views at minimum per month.
The only place where you're going to get that kind of viewership outside of the United States is in China. There might be a couple shows in China that are getting that level of viewership.
Right. Because I don't know the viewership of Fox and CNN and that, but he probably has more than them combined.
Probably. And thankfully, a lot of that stuff is dwindling. Right? I mean, I love the fact that CNN is getting less viewership. I love the fact that Fox is getting. I mistrust Fox just as much as I mistrust MSNBC.
Think
CNN,
about what you guys are fucking seeing when you look at that stuff. It's that you don't even know because it goes in subconsciously.
That's right.
The suits and the ties, and the professional attire, the desk, the bold stripes and the colors, the music, the dun 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 dun, and the fucking logos, and the whole thing is set up to make you believe what they're saying just because it looks authoritative.
Well, funnily enough, so Edward Bernays was on the David Letterman show decades ago, before Bernays passed away, obviously. It was, I don't know, maybe in the late 80s, mid 80s. And Edward Bernays gets on there. And Bernays, if you don't know, he is sort of like the father of modern PR, right? He invented the public relations movement as we know it today. Now, so he gets on the show, and then Letterman announces him, and he says, Dr. Bernays, he says, you're a doctor of something. I understand. You're this very well-respected guy. What are you a doctor of? And he goes, well, I'm a doctor of teaching you how to respect the fact that I have the label doctor.
Oh.
Right? Which was exactly true, because that is part of the weaponry of public relations and propaganda, which, by the way, it's all the same stuff, guys. Marketing, advertising, public relations, propaganda, persuasion. We're dealing with the same psychological phenomena.
Passing off opinion as truth is a big part of it.
That's right.
As settled science, as authority. Like the propaganda is making these news programs. You guys realize they're actors. They're reading scripts. They're reading teleprompters. They are told exactly what to say. They are not these super philosophical thinkers, and they might be, but they're not in that role in that moment when they're on TV.
So check this out. So now, if you guys are listening to this and you're going, well, is that true? Can you really change people's minds like that? And I will tell you that some of the science behind cognitive psychology and persuasion is some of the most reproducible and reliable science there is. Okay, so here's a couple other knowledge bombs about that, right? So there are two different models of persuasion that are very similar. And you guys, I invite you guys to Google this because I'm going to give you a very cursory definition of these two things. But there is something called the heuristic systemic model of persuasion, and there's also the elaboration likelihood model of persuasion. And they both have to do with very similar phenomena. The heuristic systemic model of persuasion is saying that if you come to a conclusion through a heuristic is a shortcut. Okay, for example, we have very limited conscious processing capability. The universe, so far as we know, is infinite. We don't have the bandwidth to process and understand an increasingly complex world, so we must use heuristics. We must use shortcuts to make sense of the world. And sometimes it serves us very well, but other times it does not serve us very well. Now, what the heuristic systemic model says is that the judgments that you make with heuristics tend to persuade your belief system more than the conclusions you come to through very deliberate systemic thought. Now, the elaboration likelihood model says that you have two different ways of processing: central processing and peripheral processing. All right, so the central processing is you sitting down and going, let me think about this. Peripheral processing is the stuff that you use shortcuts for. So those two models are really more or less saying the same thing. The elaboration likelihood model says that the more likely you are to think deeply about it, the less likely it is to actually stick and change your beliefs. The more of a tendency there is for it to bypass your conscious processing and to capitalize on those heuristics, the more likely it is to stick in your mind and change your beliefs. So if you think that this stuff is not working on you, I would caution you to examine that belief very, very deeply, because that means that you're even more susceptible. And in fact, even people like us who have studied this stuff very extensively are prey to it all the time.
Absolutely. Even something as simple as police uniforms.
That's right. You respect it.
Yeah, there's an automatic thing, and you kind of have to, back up a little bit. And you're like, it's funny because you'll see it here in Thailand. You'll see two grown men police officers all decked out in the uniforms. They got guns and everything, but they'll be on a little motorcycle together like this, almost like two gay dudes, like really close to each other. And you can't even take it seriously. It's really funny, but and it kind of breaks that illusion of that authority. But even as far as, like, say, watching the news, to tie it back and give a little example, would be tone of voice.
Yes.
The tone of voice that the news anchors use is extremely deliberate, and it's consistent. Like, just look at the evening news, and they all talk the fucking same since the evening news became a thing in the evening.
Yeah.
It's that tone of voice makes you unconsciously accept and believe what they are telling you almost without question.
Yeah, tonality is actually...
It's a heuristic.
It is a heuristic. And most persuasion pros are not even, very aware of that. Like, to me, tonality is one of the most powerful things because it's one of the most subtle. And I'll give you some examples of some of the tonality that you'll see on the news. So, like, imagine Don Lemon doing this, right? Like, now that's gonna sound funny when I do it, right? But listen to that tone, right? It's like, come on, you don't really believe that, do you? Like, listen to that tone, right? That's not giving you a chance to say, well, yeah, actually I do believe it, because it's veiled ridicule.
Veiled ridicule,
right,
is one of the fucking threads through almost all of this stuff right now. When they bring on a guest who they don't agree with, it's got that patronizing, veiled ridicule over top of being objectively fair.
Absolutely. Here's another one they use: high moral dudgeon, right? Like, I remember when I was watching Bill O'Reilly, who I couldn't stand watching this guy because he seemed like such a bullshit spinner to me. There was a guy who was questioning the official narrative of 9/11, okay? Now, whatever you think about that, guys, if you're having an emotional reaction right now of like, oh no, they're not going down this rabbit hole, are they? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Are you gonna judge me because I question something? So you're saying that because, the rest of the world believes one thing, if I question it, there's something inherently wrong with me? Anyway, this guy gets on and he started presenting some rather rational arguments about the mainstream narrative about what happened on 9/11. And he goes, how dare you question, and how dare you malign the soldiers like that? So by questioning the official narrative of 9/11, you were not supporting the troops. That was the narrative back then. And notice the high moral dudgeon. I will not let you on my show.
I will not allow you to stand on the graves of these soldiers who fought for, and that's so insidious because, and see what will happen is typically people aren't ready for that. So,
no.
And this is a tool for you guys, like they're not ready for that. So they'll instantly try to, they will react to that instead of just addressing that, seeing it on that meta level.
Yeah.
And addressing that and not even accepting that as a premise.
Yeah. I mean, for me, if somebody comes to me and says something that's absurd, I'm going to do my level best. Like, even if my gut reaction is like, moron, right? I mean, I might think that sometimes. I'll be like, well, wait a minute, dude. Don't be a dick about that. Like, well, tell me, why do you think that, right? Like, what, that's not the way I see it, but let me hear your case. Maybe
you don't speak for those people.
No.
See, that's another thing. It's like, I speak for all black people when I say this because...
Was there a quorum?
Yeah, because I'll have my friend next to me, he'll be like, you don't speak for me, motherfucker.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, right.
I speak for all this, or like, as a mom, I know that all moms will believe this. And this is interesting, dude. I've had many conversations with this, is like, I was having a conversation about this with reparations.
Yeah.
And so there are people I know, obviously black people, talking about reparations, saying that there are people who don't, there are other black people who don't believe in reparations, and then they put in quotations black.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you don't agree, you're not even black anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
So-called black people don't.
That's right. You're a race traitor. You're an Uncle Tom.
Yeah, exactly. You're a whitey. You're a cracker in disguise. And so it's super weird. Like,
it's scary. Man.
It's another. See, if you begin to notice these things, you can come at them, and we can provide lots of tools to come at them. But you want to understand them first. So, for example, the idea that your personal experience has anything to do relevant with the facts or with a debate.
That's right.
It's like I was raped.
Yeah.
Therefore, this, and this. It's like no. Your experience has nothing to do with the argument and with the statistics and with the facts and what should be done. In fact, I would even argue that your experience colors it too much emotion, and it causes you not to even think straight. But it's disingenuous because it's irrelevant to the conversation when we're talking about what needs to be done on a broad scale about these kind of things. Your personal experience is irrelevant.
Let me show you the flip side of this, which is very ironic, right? Because some of the same people who are making that argument are very logically inconsistent sometimes, right? So sometimes personal experience is relevant, sometimes it's not for some of these folks who are indoctrinated into this way of viewing the world. So I'll give you an example. So I have a very dear friend of mine who, one of my favorite people in the world, absolutely love this guy. He happens to be a guy who studied, I won't say what precisely because I don't want to identify who he was, but he studied some, very social justice-y topic in school. And he actually happens to be working in that field. He's like one of the 1 in 1,000 people who got a job, after doing some kind of like race studies or gender studies or something like that, right? Now, he and I were getting in an argument about this stuff. And I was questioning this notion that you can judge an individual person's sense of difficulty in life. How do you know how difficult my life was? How do you know how difficult anybody's life was? And the fact that I am a mostly white guy, I'm actually like 9 different races. I think it's possible my great-great-grandma was black, although there are people, it was a funny thing, there are people in my family who would deny that, which it shows that racism still does exist.
Wow.
Because the fact that you would still, that you would deny that shows that.
You smell Mexican.
Do I smell Mexican?
Your third leg is Asian.
Okay.
So you might be 9 different.
Hey, easy now, easy. Right. Oh shit. See, interesting how now I find offense to that, right? So there's a stereotype, which I don't know if it's true or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so what's funny about this is that he was making the argument because I'm white, Okay, now I look like a white guy, even though I'm also a good chunk Italian too. So that's Latin. So maybe does that qualify? Are Italians people of color? I don't know.
Yeah. Do we need to go to a paint store and be like, which version of white are you? Like, there's a spectrum of white. Like, are you
Right.
eggshell white? Are you off white?
And by the way, I think anybody who's actually white out there, I think you probably got a little more other race in you than you think. The Moors were interbreeding with a lot of us, throughout Europe. And anyway, because I'm a white guy, he believes that any difficulty I went through does not compare to the difficulty of anybody who is a person of color. And it's like, okay, I get that, yes, in the United States, there was systemic, structural oppression against black folks, even after slavery, okay, for a long time. And there is still the residue of that in our society, no doubt, absolutely no doubt about it. But what I will not accept is that just because somebody is one color means that all of their suffering is more significant than all of yours. I mean, it's like the example we were talking about this morning. Are you telling me you would rather be Sean Stevenson, who was born with this disease that made all of his bones brittle, and now he's this like very tiny man,
and he can't really move properly,
who could barely move properly, and happens to be a motivational speaker? You would rather be him than Jay-Z? Really? Because he's a white man. His suffering must not be anything compared to any other black person's suffering. I'm sorry, but fuck that. It's ridiculous. You don't know what an individual person's suffering is like. Okay, and to be able to say that because this person is this identity or that identity, it automatically should give them more social justice points.
Yes.
Who determines that scale? And why are some things more important than others?
It's based on emotion now. Like, to circle back to my point about the rape being irrelevant to the conversation, so I don't get completely fucking skewered.
Yeah.
If we're talking about, let's say someone's raped on campus. Now it's like, now she will say generally this at least generally that I see in YouTube, and that can be glorified, the minority of it, but like what I've seen and what we can have tendency to do is to generalize, right? It's like if you are gang beaten and robbed by a gang of Somalis in America, now the tendency is to generalize and now hate Somalis.
Yeah.
Because you're scared of them and you hate what you're afraid of and things like that. And the same with, say, a rape on campus. Now the campus is, let's say the rape case wasn't handled in the most efficient way, or this and that. All of a sudden, or maybe it was held in a terrible way, and the dude got off and it was just like bullshit. Well, now from her experience, the entire campus is nothing more than a breeding ground that allows and accepts rape.
Right.
But that's one case.
Across we're using one case.
Yes, and that is the whole point of what we're saying here is that one case will then, that has nothing to do with the facts. And that's what I mean by it's irrelevant. It doesn't mean her experience is irrelevant.
That's right.
It doesn't mean that experience wasn't bullshit. Maybe it was fucking rigged or fucked up. But that doesn't mean you can generalize and say the entire landscape is what your experience was.
Yeah.
And then try to force policy and legislation and force people to change based on your own experience.
Yeah. When I was a kid, when we were taught about racism, the idea behind why racism was anathema in society was that it did not give the individual a chance to express themselves as an individual. And that is something I am completely behind, right? Like, I don't think you should judge somebody because they're black, Asian, Hispanic, white, gay, trans, whatever, right? See them on their own merits.
Yes.
That was the reason why racism was anathema back then. But it has transformed. It's like it's metamorphosized into something totally different now.
The definition has transformed to the oppression narrative, and it's based on for example, I know this in the States. I don't know if this is seeped anywhere else. I just haven't done that research. I can't see that. But what I do see is the definition has changed for racism as far as between, say, blacks and whites in America. Yeah. That is, if you were historically oppressed by white people, then you cannot be racist.
Yeah.
They can be racist back because it's reverse discrimination. I see that all the time. It doesn't mean everyone does it. In fact, most don't. It's the loudest chirping
that's right.
But it tends to infect.
Most folks are pretty reasonable, man.
I know. It's we preach to the choir most of the time, but it does infect slowly everybody.
It does.
And that's what's dangerous about this, and that's why we got to fucking stop this. But the idea that the definition of racism is such now that you cannot, the oppressed minority cannot be racist to the one that they believe has been oppressed.
That's the narrative.
You cannot be racist. So it's like it's impossible. So they could straight up hate you.
Yeah.
For the color of your skin. And it's not racism.
Yeah. That's the ironic thing. And to me, it's a very toxic way to run the world. And there are a lot of people standing up against this now. And let's transition to another topic here in a minute, because I mean, we could probably go on this for hours. And I think people are getting the point. But to me, if the idea here is to give everybody a fair shake and to create a world where people are getting along, demonizing one group of people en masse is not the answer, guys.
Especially based on the past.
Yeah. And I mean, like, for a guy like me, I take a special offense to this, and I'll tell you why. Because I had a pretty difficult upbringing. I would say by anybody's standards, and I'm not going to get in here and tell a sob story and get into it. But if I told you, you would be like, holy shit, really? Like, you went through that? You probably wouldn't believe most of it, okay? So, but I'm not gonna cry about it. I'm not gonna complain about it. But when I hear people say that my suffering is bullshit, like that buddy of mine I was telling you about, the word he used was, well, you may have had some challenges when you were young. Challenges, motherfucker. Like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like,
by the way, that is a minimizing word.
It is a minimizing word.
In marketing, we'll use the word, and today, you can get this for only $10 million.
Yeah. And here's the other thing that really pisses me off about this. The vast majority of the people that I have hired, out of the hundreds of people that I've hired in my companies, are people of color. And it's not because I have some sense of obligation or duty. It's because when I hired people, I was hiring people based on their merit. And whoever showed up in my office and had the best merit and had the most talent was the person I tended to hire.
Competence.
It had nothing to do, and by the way, decreasingly, it had anything to do with their educational level. In fact, I even started to discover that some of the MBAs and PhDs that I've worked with were some of the most incompetent people I've ever experienced.
Yes, because they're typically followers and they're typically hard-headed. They're running programs and they're not open.
Yeah. They're not open. They're indoctrinated.
Yes.
Like everything that we're talking about, these guys have had higher levels of indoctrination. They've had higher degrees of it. Let's transition to something a little bit different here. Let's transition to some hope. All right. So we've been ranting on this topic. Let's shift over a little bit. This part of what triggered me and Mitch to get into this last men topic was that so I wrote this thing called the transition tribulation, and we set something up for this, a special link for it, by the way, for this third entity that we're forming.
Right.
Yeah, so if you guys go to simpleology.com/the transition tribulation, you can read a blog post series and a comic book that will tell you a narrative about something that I think is going to happen in the world. And I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version of it right now, but I think we need, you really need to read the whole thing, okay? Because you need to understand this backstory. But there is a positive, I'm going to tell you something that's scary, but there is a positive answer to all of this that Mitch and I are supremely motivated to get out there and get you guys to hear. TLDR, entrepreneurialism is the answer. Okay, so if you guys are watching this and you're like, man, I normally watch Mitch and Mark so I can learn how to make some more money with my business, we're getting there, guys.
And everything this will make you more money. Thinking better will make you more money instantly.
Absolutely. If you don't know how to think clearly, you don't know how to understand if you don't understand how to analyze statistics, by the way, you're right out of the gate, you're going to be a crippled marketer, right? And most marketers don't understand the real nuance of statistical analysis of the marketing that they're doing. partly why many of them are failing.
You
right?
screw up cause and effect,
Yeah.
you're screwed, man.
Yeah, and if you don't understand that, anyway,
Correlation does not mean causation. You get that. Don't even get that basic. You're screwed.
Yeah, and there's we're going to get into stuff like that, guys. We're going to be teaching you how to be very successful entrepreneurs, because I believe, and I know you do too, that entrepreneurialism is the only thing that's going to help you survive what I'm about to describe to you. Now, all right, to give you some context here, and I'm gonna tell a little bit of my own story, and I'm gonna sound like I'm bragging, okay? But I have to tell you this so you can take what I'm about to tell you seriously. Okay, so I'm the guy who invented the tracking pixel, okay? I started the first ebook publishing company. I launched the first online ad tracking company. I started the second pay-per-click search engine company long before Google was even around. I'm pretty good at seeing what's gonna happen on the technological landscape. Now, if you go back and you look at the tech press when I was coming out with ebooks, I was getting lambasted for ebooks. Like, nobody's ever going to read ebooks. That was the thing that people were saying. Ebooks sell more now than print books, guys, okay? So I'm saying that so you can maybe take what I'm about to tell you with a little bit of seriousness, because I have another prediction that I'm going to make that I think is a little dire, that I think everybody needs to know and everybody needs to take seriously. And it's a prediction I made in that link that I gave you guys. Okay, so it's simpleology.com/the transition tribulation. Now, here's the short version of the conversation. Okay, everything in the world right now is getting smaller, faster, more powerful, more available, and cheaper. Okay, now this is, you could analyze it as being a consequence of Moore's law. Moore's law is the doubling of computational power. That's the simplest way to express it. Really, it has to do with the size of transistors, right? But we're talking about computational power.
And it happens so quick. I want to give you guys just a little idea of, it's happening way faster than this, but just think about this. Anybody remembers video games when you were a child? If you remember Nintendo, it was 8-bit games. And then what happened? A few years later, Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo came out. What was that? 16-bit.
And before you were born, we had little Ataris.
Right, which who knows what bit that was.
These were, I don't even know what do you call that? There was like two little bars.
A little bit.
Yeah, and we were playing tennis on the screen, and it was like the craziest thing in the world. Man, we're playing a game on our TV.
So think about the doubling. You go from Nintendo at 8 to a few years later, Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo at 16. And then you had Sega 32X, which was a little add-on, which is 32. You notice it's doubling. It's 8, 16, 32, and then what happened after Sega 32X and all that? Then you had Nintendo 64. It was the big breakthrough.
Yes.
That was the 32, busting 64. And then what happened after Nintendo 64 and GameCube and all this? All of a sudden, it switched to 128. The 64 doubled, and that was PlayStation.
Yep.
And then, so the doubling, if you look at it at that is on a tiny micro level at how fast these things can double. But what Mark's saying is like the doubling is out of control.
It's totally out of control, and it's not just happening in computational power. It's happening across every industry on the planet. So we were both fans of Robert Anton Wilson, right? But that was one of the things that got Mitch and I to like bond really quickly. So I read Robert Anton Wilson's books when I was a kid, and was very fortunate to be his friend. Later on in life, I published some of his stuff at one of my early websites back in the early days. And I was very sad for that guy's loss, because he was such a great contribution to the world, and he opened my mind up on so many levels. But he was popularizing the notion that this has been going on throughout history, right? Like if you look at the period of time in between a paradigm shifting advancement or discovery throughout history, it has been having itself. And we're at a point right now where we're getting a paradigm shift almost every day in one industry or another. Right now, the singularity guys are talking about this. Now, Ray Kurzweil popularized this, but it was actually the notion of a gentleman named Werner Vinge before Kurzweil kind of co-opted it a little bit.
Yes.
Kurzweil's now, I don't know if he's giving credit to Vinge, correctly or not. Kurzweil, by the way, if you don't know who he is, he's the chief technology officer of Google. He was the inventor of the flatbed scanner. Very, very brilliant guy, and he's been very, very accurate at predicting the arc of technology quite well.
These things can be predicted across the universe and in different ways, and that's what makes it so reliable. And this is what allows you to kind of see, because you look at black holes. Black holes have a singularity moment.
That's right.
Right, and you can see it gets to a point where it's like, another word for the event horizon is at the point of, another way to say maybe point of no return.
Right.
To bring it back down. And so you can see these things coming in different ways in the universe as well.
Well, to just give a little bit of background on the notion of the singularity from a black hole. So if you're not familiar with that notion in astronomy, it's a black hole is a gravitational field that's so strong, not even light can escape. So by definition, we can't see past the singularity because that's the point where there's no more light. It's sucking all the light in. So how could we possibly see what happens past that singularity point? So it's a metaphor for when computers get as intelligent as human beings, how can we predict what the world is going to be like, right? And there are people who are saying that that's going to happen, by around like 2025, 2030, we're getting pretty close to it. Now, there's nuance to this conversation to be had. Is floating point operations per second of the brain the measure of consciousness? I don't know. That makes the assumption that consciousness is a brain local phenomenon, which I deeply question.
Is there all of a sudden just self-awareness when it hits that level? Because that's a whole other story.
It's a whole other story, yeah. But regardless of what you think about that, the trends are pretty irrefutable. Here's the one point I want to make that I challenge anyone to dispute, okay? If everything is getting cheaper, faster, smaller, more available, more powerful, because of the adjuncts to Moore's law, how do you think that that's not going to happen to weapons technology? And when that happens to weapons technology, what is going to happen to the monopoly of force that government has right now? Monopoly of force is the phenomenon that keeps society together. When governments no longer have a monopoly of force, what is going to happen? Now, guys, this can happen asymmetrically. There could be a black swan event where some very small country maybe develops some super powerful AI or some, nano computing, quantum computing leap that gives them the ability to co-opt all of the technology in the world. It could happen in such a strange way. One madman could get a hold of it. You never know.
Or what if the idea of something as powerful as nuclear weapons made in a different way that we can't conceive right now, what if that weapon is available to be 3D printed or made in a way where everybody now has nuclear weapons?
Well, we have 3D printable automatic weapons now. Now, a lot of people say, well, the government's just going to make the plans illegal. Really? Is that your argument? Because, that was the government's plan for stopping piracy.
And alcohol.
Yeah, right. How did that work out? How did that work out for prohibition? How did that work out for piracy? Okay, the genie's out of the bottle, guys.
The internet, the internet is the fucking internet now.
Yeah, that's it. Now, so I think that there is a conflict coming in the future. Okay, and the conflict is not between nation states, it's not between ideologies, God damn it, it's not between races, okay? Because I think races want to get along. All right. Yes, I think there are probably some biological tendencies where we tend to group together more as races, but I don't know many real racists. People who are like, man, I hate such and such kind of people.
Yeah.
I
they're
don't
very far and few between.
Very few and far between. I think the conflict of the future, guys, is between fast-moving technology and slow-moving governments. Okay, that's the argument.
Because they can't. There's no way they can control that.
Nope. And think about it. So Hurricane Katrina, right? Do you remember the United States response to Hurricane Katrina?
What response?
What response, right? There were millions of people displaced when Hurricane, well, I don't know about millions, but hundreds of thousands, right? Hundreds of thousands of people displaced. They're still cleaning up the wreckage from that here. This is what? A couple decades after Katrina hit, right? It's been many, many years after that hit. So if the government could not rally a response to a natural disaster, which we should be planning for and preparing for, how do you think the government is going to handle the advent of 3D printable WMDs or some kind of asymmetric technology that's going to disrupt everything? Here's another thing, okay? You think blockchain is the answer? Read Satoshi's white paper, okay? In Satoshi's white paper, so for those of you guys who don't know this, okay, so blockchain technology was invented by a guy who invented it with a pseudonym, could be a group of people, Satoshi Nakamura. He wrote the white paper. You can go to bitcoin.org and read the white paper yourself. And the very
It could be a woman, Mark.
Could be a woman.
Could be a group of them.
Could be a group
The
of
same
women.
group of women who pushed prohibition
And
when the men were at war and snuck that shit in.
I'm clearly a misogynist because I said guys.
They
I
could
said
be
guys.
a bunch of drunk women.
That's right. That's right. There's probably a bunch of Filipino women. I think that's what it is. All right. So now, here's the thing, guys. If you read the abstract of the white paper, now this is something I was telling everybody before the crypto bubble burst, and everybody was like, "Mark, you're being a pessimist. You know, the crypto's here forever." John McAfee said that Bitcoin's going to reach $1 million. I'm going to trust him, and I'm like, okay, good luck with that, guys. Let's see how it shakes out. Now, what I'm predicting right now hasn't happened yet. If you read the white paper, there's a line in there that says, as long as the majority of the nodes in the chain, and I'm paraphrasing here, you guys can go find there's this very short abstract, it's a paragraph long, you'll find the line, as long as the majority of the nodes are controlled by people who are not trying to subvert the integrity of the blockchain, more nodes will keep the blockchain intact. Well, what happens when there is an advancement in quantum computing that is orders of magnitude above what processors are now, and somebody hoards that technology? Okay, that means that they would be able to come in and with one machine subvert the entire blockchain. So if you think blockchain is the answer to all of this, I gotta question you. I gotta question you because you're not thinking it through all the way. Because I think that as long as statement is a very major assumption. It's a very major assumption. Anyway, the point I'm getting at here, guys, is this. We're coming to a point where I believe that whether we end up in a utopian society or a dystopian society, the other end of all of this change that we're experiencing right now is if there's going to be a final end.
And if there's a difference between utopian and dystopian, the more you push for utopia, the more you create a dystopia.
Right. I've read Brave New World. I've read 1984, right? Yeah, it's true. Actually, side note on that, everybody should read Island. If you read Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, the guy who wrote that, wrote a book to go, a companion book called Island, which is about an actual, a genuine attempt at a utopian society.
Which is probably the only the way you can kind of get close to that, because you can't. This is why North Korea, they're so shut off. They understand that the only way they can keep that control is if they shut it off.
Yeah.
And it's the same reason why Toronto's building that little mini smart city, little dystopian city.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it on a mass level. You just do it in that little island, so to speak. Even if it's a metaphorical island around the other cultures touch, and then you human beings screw up a utopia. Who would have thought?
Subsequently, this was the good part of Plato's Republic that we were drawing from when we started the United States Constitution, right? Was the notion that, we could have multiple test beds of political ideologies. You would allow these nation states to manage themselves, held together by a loose federal government that would come into power when our security was questioned. And then we could come together and defend each other. Okay, but we were allowing each other to have the freedom to have these test beds, these little islands, these little mini islands. There's some brilliance in that. But here's the point I'm getting at, guys. Whatever this ends up being, I think that there's an unavoidable transition period where the comfort and the ease that we are all accustomed to right now is going to be challenged very deeply. A lot of the systems that we are relying on right now are going to be stressed to the point where we will not be able to take care of everybody on the planet. Okay? So, I want you to think about that very, very carefully. So, and I want to give you an example of a way that I think that you can observe this happening right now. All right? Amazon is very soon going to start delivering packages with drones.
They already have autonomous semi-trucks being tested right now.
Autonomous semi-trucks, okay? There are fast food restaurants right now that are being manned by total automation. Okay, you can walk up and there is no cashier there, right? People are going to be laid off en masse across the entire world because of automation. That is but one of the many ways that disruption is going to occur in the world right now, and I don't think the governments are going to be able to respond fast enough.
What are they going to do? Because if part of that response means they need resources and money,
yes,
where are they going to get the money from? Because the government doesn't make money. The government takes money from its citizens. So then what's going to happen?
But the government actually does make money. With Keynesian economics, well, but it's not the government actually. So the Federal Reserve is a quasi-governmental agency, right? Now we actually can't, so, and this is another rabbit hole, and we should maybe make this a topic for the next show, is the difference between Keynesian economics and then the Austrian school, right? So the Austrian school, and most of us think that the world works based on the Austrian-based notion that everything is backed by assets. But nothing in the world right now is backed by assets. Every currency that we have is a fiat currency, meaning that there is no actual asset backing the value of it. The only thing backing the value of it is the might of the military, right? Saying, and right now there's the petrodollar theory, and there are all these reasons why people agree that this currency has value. And the monetary supply is increased every time a loan occurs. Now, people think that when a loan happens in the United States, that some guy goes into a vault and he pulls out some money, some stacks of dollars, and then he deposits that into your account. No. What he does is he makes an entry on a computer, and that inflates the supply of dollars. Now, the majority of the banks in the United States are not community banks. Community banks don't get this privilege. Banks that are part of the Federal Reserve System do. Banks that are part of the Federal Reserve System can do fractional reserve lending, and what that means is that they only have to back up what they loan out by 10% of asset holdings. And those asset holdings are usually more fiat currency, so that, that asset is also a fake asset. And they can do this to a point where it's basically like 990 times. I can't remember how the math works. But so this is how inflation works, by the way.
And that's why they get bailed out, by the way, is they have to, but don't have to. They should be allowed to fail. Any business or entity should be allowed to fail in the free market. But
it would be doom and gloom, man. That's the argument.
The thing with inflation, which most people don't realize, is you put new money into the money supply out of thin air, then all of a sudden that inflation is another way of saying that is debasement of the current value of the entire supply. So what happens is, in essence, that's a hidden tax.
It is a hidden tax. Well, in fact, so think about this. If you looked at the invention of the Federal Reserve, all right, so we had 4 different phases of our monetary policy in the United, well, actually 5 if you count the decoupling from gold, right? So, we had the first, asset-backed currency, and then we went to this thing called the greenback, which was a fiat currency during the Civil War, so that people could practice a form of Keynesianism.
It was supposed to be a very temporary
Which is supposed to be a temporary
thing. And it
thing.
kind of was.
And it was. And then we shut that down, and then we had a kicking out of a central banking system once, and then people were understood.
Andrew Jackson, right?
Right, exactly. And then we had to defend against that. And then when Woodrow Wilson came into office, he allowed the Federal Reserve to be created. So that was the 4th phase. And then the 5th phase was we decoupled it from gold, which thanks to Richard Nixon.
In 71, he just took it right off.
Exactly.
People say we should go back, but the world is different. We can't go back. We can't do that anymore.
That's a whole other rabbit hole, man. And I'm not an economist. I don't know. But I mean, people have to know, like, money is not what you think it is, most people. And guys, if you think this is crazy, I mean, just Google it and find out. I mean, look into it. But really do a deep dive.
This is either elementary to you, when you watch Zeitgeist fucking 12 years ago, or this is completely like, what the hell are you guys talking about?
Yeah, and there was a lot of truth in Zeitgeist. There was some nonsense too, but there was a lot of truth.
The second part, when they went to the utopia, it was like, oh yeah, you can expose the corruption you can expose the corruption and how things are done on this side, but then they flipped it over, and I didn't realize at the time that it was pushing a form of communism and socialism as the answer. And I was like, you son of a bitch, you slow play us into that. You're like, yeah, this is true, this is true. Communism.
Yeah, there was a lot of conflation they made in the religious stuff.
Funny they would do that.
Yeah. Funnily enough, in the second one, the guy that he's quoting was a good friend of mine. He just passed away just a few years ago, Jacques Fresco, the guy from the Venus Project. And Jacques and I, he and I met because we had some interesting similar notions about we had some very stark differences. Like Jacques thought that everything needed to be controlled by a central computer, right? And I would always say, well, Jacques, who controls the central computer? And he was like, well, we'll figure that out. And I'm like, No, dude, that's a pretty important question.
That's
Anyway,
everything, yeah.
He was a brilliant guy. Craig Joseph eventually went off and started taking credit for the whole resource-based economy thing that he got from Jacques Fresco, by the way. Some funny side politics there. No offense to Craig Joseph. I don't even know the guy at all, but Jacques was a dear friend.
Can't
and I
trust
love the
somebody
guy.
who has 2 first names.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But Jacques was a genius, and I miss that guy dearly as well. He was a brilliant guy, but I disagree with some of the communistic approaches to his stuff. Anyway, guys, here's the thing that the real punchline before we wrap this up. Okay, I think this transition period is going to cause some serious upheaval. All right, if you have a job right now and you're relying on it, how long is that going to last? How many black swan events is it going to take before your job is in jeopardy, before the security of your neighborhood is in jeopardy? The answer, in my opinion, is what I call a lifeboat business. Okay, and a lifeboat business is one that is built on systems and culture. Why? Your assets can be seized by the government through eminent domain. Okay, your currencies can be devalued overnight. Ask anybody who was in Cuba before the revolution, okay, who was a millionaire one night and then the next day lost everything.
Or fucking Zimbabwe. Or Germany when you had to
The Weimar Republic, yeah.
the wheelbarrow full of cash.
That's right.
You dump it all off just to get yourself some bread. Or Argentina in 2001.
That's right. Recent examples: Iraq, Argentina, right?
In Argentina, you go to the bank machine and try to get your money out, and the banks are like, we got nothing.
Yeah.
All your life savings are gone instantly.
Yeah. So guys, if you think that hoarding money in the bank is the answer, if you think that the assets that you own are the answer, if you think any of those things are the answer, I gotta seriously question whether or not you're thinking it through. I think that the real security that you have in your life is going to come from your health. That includes your mental health, your skills, the people that you have around you, and if you have a business, the sanctity of the systems and the culture of that business. Because here's the thing, guys, if they take away all your assets, if they devalue all of your currency, if you have systems and culture in your business, that is a better hedge against everything else. Think about that, right?
They could shut down your business. They could kill the websites. They could kill the name. They could disgrace you. They could get rid of everything that symbolically makes the business the business.
Yep.
But if you got the people, you have your team, you have your people, and you have the same values and the skills, you can do any business again.
Absolutely. And the systems they can't take away from you either. Okay, unless they seize all of your digital assets somehow, which is possible, but this is a better hedge. Okay, so guys, part of the narrative that we're going to be giving you over this whole time is teaching you how to build that kind of lifeboat business. Okay, and part of that involves also taking care of yourself physically, because your health is a big, big part of this. If you have a great business with great culture and great systems, but your health is shit, well, you're not going to last that long. So part of what we're talking about here is going to be teaching you guys to see what's actually going on in the world, how to think clearly, how to take care of yourself, how to actually be responsible in this life, how to be prosperous, all right? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with being successful and being prosperous.
No, and there's nothing wrong with being with profiting and prospering fast either. But this is not a get-rich-quick set of ideas, and in fact, I don't want to say it's the opposite, because you can make a lot of money very quickly.
You can,
and that's what I teach, and that's what we do. But you don't want to think that way. Thinking that way will actually slow that down. In fact, so you said my thoughts to end this, and then I'll let you kind of finish this off, was like, you said fast-moving technology and slow-moving government are going to clash. Well, if you think about, most people think about government, the role I like to think about is the government's role should be to be like, we are the master, the government is our slave.
Should be.
But most people, because they don't fucking grow up, is they like to think of and rely on the government as their parent. Well, what happens if a parent loses control of its children? Or if what happens if a parent, let's say you said fast-moving technology, slow-moving government. Government is the parent. The narrative for everybody is the parent, so it's gonna act like that.
Yeah.
The more that people want it to. What does a parent do when it loses control over everything,
Yeah.
it puts the fucking iron fist down. It puts the foot down harder.
That's right.
So my point is that business and entrepreneurship is not going to get easier. It's going to get a lot harder. It's a paradox because it will get easier in the fact that technology allows you to really make money quickly and you can...
We can make money faster now.
Yes, you can make money faster, but don't think it's going to get easier.
Yeah.
It'll get faster, but it won't get easier.
Well, the challenges are morphing, right? The challenges are coming in the form of censorship and government control, and I mean, all of this upheaval and conflict that we're seeing.
And the ability of other people and your competition to fuck with you, make lies about you, and also they can scam the system and get ahead in dishonest ways. And
absolutely.
so that's good. That landscape is going to get very sticky.
It is, it is. Guys, to wrap this up, I'm going to tell you what guys like Mitch and I are going to do. And we're going to invite you along for the ride. I'm not going to tell you should do this because it might not be for you, okay? You might be so far gone in your indoctrination and in your habit patterns that you refuse to change, that you listen to what we're saying and you just ridicule it and you go, there's no point in listening to all this stuff. I'm gonna flip on my TV shows and I'm gonna go into my avoidance behaviors and I'm gonna go into fantasy land because that is comfortable. Well, I will challenge you to question that philosophy because here's the thing, guys. You're either gonna pay now or you're gonna pay later. You pay now in the form of getting tough, making yourself stronger, making yourself healthier, making yourself more financially fit, being more responsible, seeing reality more clearly for what it is. None of those things are easy. Or you're going to pay in the form of illness, poverty, servitude.
And even servitude in your mind. Be willing to find the truth and be willing to die for it because, trust me, many people in this world don't want the truth. They just want to be right, and they want to be right. They want to make you wrong.
Absolutely.
When you're looking at conversations, when you're looking at debate, try to see, are they talking to you to try to make you wrong and make themselves right, or are they trying to have a fucking conversation?
Mitch and I can make a lot more money by having a simple conversation with you guys, making everything sound easier than it really is, and telling you everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows and everything is going to work out fine. It would be so much easier for us to make money that way. And most of the guys teaching you how to do entrepreneurialism are doing that. Well, that's not the conversation I'm willing to have.
Yes.
I'm willing to lose a little bit of money so that I can tell people the truth.
We need that more than anything.
I think we need it more
and we're
than
not
anything.
going to tell you it's hard to virtue signal and create a fucking, a virtue signaling narrative about that. No, but this shit is fucking hard. Life is hard. It's not easy. There is no such thing as get rich quick. In fact, people who think that people who have a get rich quick mentality, which is a fuckload of you watching this right now, I assure you that is why you're being played like a puppet and you buy everybody's products. Because you believe that the $1 million will happen to you tomorrow, even though you are still you and you haven't fucking figured your shit out enough. You think that $1 million will happen to you tomorrow. So anybody who claims fast money, you will immediately fucking be a puppet to their shit and buy their shit, and you're just a puppet to all these people. Instead of trying to get quick money, how about ask yourself, who do I have to become so that the money just comes to me?
Guys, I want to end this on a plug, actually. There's a guy in the other room I want to introduce you guys to here real quick. And he's probably very shy, but he shouldn't be because he's a fucking genius at what he does. And yes, I am.
Are you wearing a shirt?
Are you gonna? Oh, okay. I was gonna ask him to come over here. Is he in the shot? Is he in the shot? Yeah, but your head's cut off. Yeah, you gotta come down a little bit. Guys, let me just, before I introduce who this guy is right here. All right. Actually, yeah, you might want to come around here, brother. All right.
Sit on the table and take your shirt off. Sit on Mark's lap.
Yeah. Please don't. So guys, listen. We are forming an ecosystem. All right. Mitch, this gentleman right here, I'll introduce here in a minute. Mac, you guys heard in the background here. You got the wonderful Luke Ball as one of our one of the guys on the crew doing the camera work over here. We are forming a nucleus of people who believe that we have to take this shit seriously. Okay, you get better in life by surrounding yourself with better people. All right, and you change your behaviors by surrounding yourself around people who have the behaviors that you need to model. I think that health is a huge part of this. If you're going to be an entrepreneur without learning how to be healthy, you are making an enormous mistake. And I will tell you, having made that mistake, I will show pictures next time of how obese I was, maybe to show everybody. Like, and I'm pretty jacked now at 50 years old. 10 years ago, I was flabby and had a big old gut and a double chin, and I was not in a good situation at all. Okay, I turned that around.
Pictures.
You've seen those, yeah. It's shocking, right? Because people are like, damn,
and
that was you?
Super white then. You were like, you looked like an Uncle Fester, like an entrepreneurial Uncle Fester.
If I still look like that, I'd be so offended right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Thank God I don't look like that
Anything
anymore.
wrong with being white?
Yeah.
Well,
we were just
there's a
talking
whole
about
lot
that.
about it,
We
yeah.
were just talking about that. So listen, guys. So Thomas Engbert's right here, all right? So I want you to go to his website, superhuman6.com, okay? He's going to give you 6 exercises to help you correct biomechanical deficiencies in your body. Now, who is Thomas Engbert? Thomas Engbert happens to be my trainer. He also happens, well, training partners now, whatever we call this, whatever we're doing all the time, yeah. So he and I are coaching each other, training each other. I help him with his business. He's helping me with with my body. We train each other. And he also is the guy that UFC stars go to when their bodies are messed up. The best UFC fighter on the planet right now, almost indisputably, is John Jones. There is one man on the planet who has a chance at beating John Jones, and his name is Johnny Walker. Who did Johnny Walker go to when he jacked up his shoulder? This dude right here, okay? So go to superhuman6.com. This is the kind of dude that we are surrounding ourselves with. This is the kind of people we want in our periphery, okay? We want world-class people who are taking their lives seriously, who are not gonna tell you pretty fucking lies to make a quick buck, okay? Who are willing to face the hard shit that's going on in the world right now and do something about it.
And have fun doing it.
Yeah.
But don't think that this isn't fucking serious, because shit's about to get serious. And if you get caught with your pants down, you're gonna get your dick cut off, man.
Guys, if you're obese right now, if you're broke right now, if you are brainwashed right now, if you are any of those things, you're in serious trouble. And what we are trying to do is undo all of that, okay? And I'm gonna say some very politically incorrect things right now. It's not okay to be obese. It's not okay. And if you're obese right now, and if you think I'm getting in your face and shaming you, no, it's not about that. I'm saying that with as much compassion as I can possibly muster. Because me telling you that you're obese and telling you to fix it is the most compassionate thing I can do. Me mollycoddling you and telling you, oh, it's okay, baby. Some people were just born that way. It's all right. That's not doing you a damn bit of good, man. It's not doing you any good at all. Because what that person wants is for you to stay weak. I don't want you to stay weak, because you can change obesity by changing your lifestyle, guys. It's pretty well established right now. There are a lot of different theories about it, but you know some of the basic things that are irrefutable. You gotta be moving, you gotta be eating natural food, you gotta be getting in touch with nature.
But some people have thyroid issues, bro.
So, well, and there are things we can do about that. They're big bones.
Yeah.
I'm not fat, I'm big bone.
Yeah, I'm festively plump.
Yeah, yeah. Guys, listen.
You're a fat ass at Thanksgiving. You drink gravy, you fucking fat fuck.
I let food be my teacher for a long time, man. And I paid the price.
I love food, man.
I love food too, but now I realize I love having a functional body a lot more. Tony Robbins says it very well. He says, nothing tastes as good as fit feels, right? It's true.
And even just like, I mean, you can have sex, or you can heave over her body for 36 seconds, having an asthma attack as you pouring rain down onto her carcass.
Because I'm sure she'll love you anyway.
Totally.
Right? Yeah, those are more of the pretty lies, guys. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're not a bad person if you find somebody unattractive because they're not healthy. It does not make you a bad person. That's one of the narratives. You are attracted to what you are attracted to. It's a fact. I don't know how much control you have over that. Maybe we can condition it. But this is the kind of hard truth we want to speak.
And if you're obese, you may not be attracted to yourself. And you can't control what you're attracted to.
Now, there's some deep psychology we can get into there. Now, guys, let's wrap it up at this point. What I want to urge everyone to do now is on the side of Mitch's chair, you guys can see the URL, thelastmen.show. I strongly encourage you to opt into that email list because I don't know how long this show is going to last on these channels.
And it may be years and years, but we don't know when.
We don't know when. At some point, they're going to come for us and they're going to shut us down because we're saying things that are not acceptable in the Overton window.
And this whole thing is going big. We're not doing this on a small level either. So when you opt in, we're going to give you we don't know yet what, but we'll give you a lot of cool stuff that'll be bonuses and things that you won't find online.
Yeah, you're going to be getting notifications about when the shows happen. We're going to be giving you all kinds of tools and resources to help you. We will be selling things too.
Dick pics?
Yeah, we'll be selling those.
I ain't giving that shit away for free.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I am.
Right. This is how politically incorrect we're going to get, guys. All right, if you're offended by those things, I'm not sorry. It's just, it's
look, the whole having fun thing.
Yeah, we got to have a little bit of fun with
Comedy is under attack, and I'm very specific when I do this because
Yeah.
comedy is under attack, and that's complete horseshit. We need it in our society. When comedy dies in a culture, and this, if you guys got to go read history, then when comedy dies in a culture, and the mood becomes serious, that's when shit goes really dark. Nazi Germany. If you read The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl,
great book.
there's one passage in that book where he said that the one way in which they would connect with each other and keep hope alive and deal with the enormous, as you could imagine, stress was to joke and tell comedy to each other, specifically dark comedy. And in fact, the worse that things got, the darker the comedy that they used for each other. And so comedy, no matter how dark and offensive that you may think it is a survival mechanism. It is a way to deal with the dark truths about life without having to go there for real and stuff like that. So comedy is extremely important, and dark comedy, especially as times get more dark. So I do this for a reason. I find shit funny, but you cannot underestimate and understate the importance of dark, offensive comedy as a positive thing in our culture, despite what the radical feminist whores might say otherwise.
Right on. Well, I'll just underline that to end it then, and I'll just talk about David Goggins. David Goggins is a black man who experienced real racism when he was a young man, and he wrote a fantastic book called Can't Hurt Me, which I've listened to in audio form now probably about 10 times. Absolutely love that book. I love that guy's story. He had an extremely abusive father. He had a similar kind of childhood I did, in certain ways, and he rose out of that, and he's at a point now where he's like, look, yeah, I experienced real racism. I went through hardships, but I'm not going to allow that to turn me into a victim. And one of the things that he did when he was going through Navy SEAL training, which is some of the hardest training there is out there, in BUDS, which is the very first part of Navy SEAL training, right? One of the things they have is this thing called Hell Week, where you're basically awake for 6 days straight. And they have you out there doing this shit called surf torture, where you're in the middle of the night, it's freezing in the water, and then the surf comes in and it keeps like lashing over you, pelting you, and then you're just like shivering, right? And he said one of the things that he did was he started singing that song from Platoon where Elias is getting killed, like that that music, and he would do that just as a joke to make his little squad, feel a little more, okay with put
a little glamour onto it in a way.
Yeah. I mean, he just did it. It was just for fun, and his guys would they would bust up laughing, and it helped them get through the shit. Okay, so guys, Mitch is a much funnier guy than I am. I'm gonna learn some comedy from you. I did a little bit of it, but Mitch has got it up to a high art, man. And some of your posts, man, are fucking just genius. The comedy of it. But we will have that as part of this whole thing. We're gonna be trying to make it entertaining. We're going to try to make it very, but serious, because we're not telling you to be jokers, okay? We're not saying just joke about this and don't take it seriously. We're teaching you the comedy as a coping mechanism.
Yes.
To help you deal with this shit. Because it is serious stuff. Okay, and we're also going to be teaching you very, very practical stuff. We didn't get into a lot of the practical stuff today about how to make money, but in upcoming episodes, we'll be doing some very deep dives in that stuff, teaching you guys how to write effective ad copy, how to make money with your business, how to organize your business in a way that it will last. Okay, so if you guys are into that, go to thelastmen.show, opt into the email address there, because we don't know how long it's going to last on the channels, but there you go.
Tell us what you want to hear too. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like.
Yeah, we want, and you know what? Don't censor yourselves. Give us the feedback. If you were butthurt and offended, we want to hear that too.
Yeah, I want to hear how hurt your butt is, so I can shove a bigger one in there next time. Whatever you didn't like, I'm going to do more of.
Probably. Just being honest.
Sweet.
Peace, guys.
Take care.
All right.
Later.